Welcome to the Mothers Leading the Way video series. Join us as we explore practical tips and tricks based on research to manage the many roles that working mothers play.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mothers Leading the Way, and I am very excited to welcome Dr. Aimee Myers, one of my peers, who I just think has wonderful lived experiences and information that personally resonate with me, but I also think is going to resonate with many of you. So we are going to just jump right on in because we have lots of questions. Aimee, do you mind introducing yourself and kind of describing what your professional background and personal background are?
Sure. So I am an associate professor now at Texas Women's University in teacher education. My research interests align predominantly with culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogies or practices just in general. And I definitely think my lived experiences have shaped that interest. I was a mother by the time I was 16 years old. Celebrated my 16th birthday, and a month later I had an infant in my hand. And so my entire professional and academic experience has involved being a mom. And I was a teacher for a long time. And again, I think being a mom drove that professional interest in being a K through 12 teacher before I went and pursued my Ph.D. in curriculum and instruction.
So you've really served in multiple roles, including being a student while also being a mom and an employee.
Yeah.
Yes.
The mom life is everything. The mom life is in there. I don't know what it's like to adult without being a mom.
Right. And I think that's such an important voice for us to hear. My children are now grown adults. My oldest is 33. So I also have spent the majority of my kind of career life and school life as a kind of working mom. And it's a voice that we need to hear because there are unique challenges. And so I really would love just to hear a little bit about your experience as a working mom attending college.
So it starts, with the bachelor's degree. That was a challenge trying to decide if I was even going to go to college because I had a child. And luckily, I had a mom who was super supportive of me doing that. And so I was pursuing a bachelor's degree while working about 30 hours a week at a childcare facility. I chose a childcare facility so I could be with my child at least part of the day because I knew if I was working a job away from them and going to school full time, I would never see my child. And so I chose childcare, and then that definitely kind of drove that interest, I think, in being a teacher. I worked on the bachelor's degree in English, wanted to be a literature professor, and went straight from the bachelor's into a master's, and still was a single mom. From the bachelor's into the master's was a single mom, and stayed in the childcare industry again so I could still spend some time with my child while being enrolled in school full time. But after the master's degree program started, I started working full time while trying to carry a full-time load and then serve as a graduate teaching assistant while being a mom. And then later on in life, married, had 2 more children, and then dived into my profession, teaching K through 12 for about 10 years before feeling the call of, not the call of the wild, but the call of the doctoral. So the Ph.D. was calling me back. And was really scared to do it. I actually had a professor when I was working on my master's degree. I had a professor tell me I was not cut out for PhD school because I was a mom. And because of my background, I came from, an urban school And so she felt like my academics were not on par with other people. And I faced a lot of other challenges as a single mom. And so I kind of put that dream of getting that advanced degree on the back burner. And luckily I had a supervisor, a assistant principal at the school that I worked at, the high school that I worked at, tell me, you really should go back and get your Ph.D. and, become a professor who teaches future teachers. And again, having 3 kids at home, I was like, how? How does one do this? But I dived in, and again, I was working full time and had 3 kids at home when I started the doctoral program. So it was a lot, but we made it work.
And I think that there is kind of, if we look at the research and look more broadly, as working moms, that's oftentimes what we do. We simply work and we get it done.
Right.
And actually, I think there's a recent study that actually says that if you actually want work done, one of the best people to give it to is a working mom, because they are able to get the job done and do it without error. What do you think were some of the techniques that you use that really helped you to integrate your multiple roles? You talked a little bit already about working at the child care center. What are some other ways that you were able to integrate?
I think some of the things that I can think of right off the bat is when I would interview for jobs, I would ask, is this a family-friendly environment? And I was very upfront with the fact that, I have children, I'm pursuing a degree. Are you open to having children in the office with me as needed sometimes, or leaving occasionally? Is there a flexible schedule? What are the expectations for that? And so interviewing them as well as them interviewing me became a big part of who I was as a mom, and just being super upfront, not trying to pretend to be something that I'm not, I think was a big part. Also, location was a really big deal for me. I wanted to, after being a mom for as long as I've been a mom, I understand that commute eats up a ton of that very valuable, precious little time that you have with your kids, but also that time that you need to work and do your academics. And so at some point in time, we actually sold our home and we moved into a 600 square foot apartment with all the kids and the dog, me and my husband. So there's a bunch of us crammed into 600 square feet, but that apartment was within a 2-mile radius of where I worked, where my kids went to school, where their doctor's office was, where I went to school. So all the things, work, school, kids, everything was in a 2-mile radius of this apartment complex. And I don't know if we could have survived without that. And the cool thing about it is it was very clear that there were other mothers who had the same game plan, because where we lived was overflowing with other mothers who were seeking their degree. And that was a lifesaver for us. So I definitely think, finding the right fit in your job is really important. And as a professor, I've worked at research institutions, I worked in school districts and things like that. But I've also worked, jobs where you weren't required to have a skill. It was a survival job. It was a paycheck job, right? And even at childcares, you have some childcare administrations that are very supportive of the fact that you have a family. And then there's others that expect you to make the childcare your life. And that's not the place where I want to work, basically. So I would definitely say interviewing the job was a key for me, making sure my location was smart. And I think the third one for me was treating the degree like a second job. I, especially with the doctoral, since I was working full time and raising kids with the doctoral degree, I had very distinct set times that I would get up and work on schoolwork. So 3 days a week, not every day of the week, but 3 days a week, I would set my alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning. And from 4:30 in the morning to 7:30 in the morning was my work time for the degree. And I would do from 4:30 to 7:30 work time on the degree, and then get my kids up, get them to school, get myself ready, go off to work, and come home at, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then do it all over again. And I am not a morning person. I hate mornings. I am not a happy morning person, but I was finding that if I did my schoolwork early in the morning, my brain was fresh. And my school stuff was what was taking my brain capacity. My job could be done kind of with your eyes closed type of thing. And so I was more productive in the morning than I was trying to do my schoolwork late at night. And that was one of the big tricks for me, was finding the productive time and then sticking to it, not being like, well, if I have homework this week, I'll get up during this time at work. No, I got up and worked, and I worked ahead because, having kids, it's only a matter of time before someone gets sick or someone needs to come out of school for some reason, or there's some kind of big school event that you have to attend. And so working ahead was key for me. And then sticking to that very distinct schedule was key.
So really you kind of controlled both your space, but also your time. And you had, what I'm hearing is these very clear boundaries. And part of those boundaries were also, who am I willing to work for?
Right.
And that there are times where a job on paper may look perfect, but if you really kind of question people about whether they are able to be flexible, which I think working mothers in general need, but if you're a working mother who's also in school, you need some flexibility because there may be, final exam time or et cetera, where you need to be able to set the boundaries that I can't take on extra work this week for this reason.
Right. Absolutely. And they have to understand it. You want to work for an employer who understands, like, right now, while I'm working on the degree, you might not get 100% of me at certain times, but then there will be other times that you're going to get all of me that you need, and you're going to get a better me, and you're going to get a me who can multitask like a beast.
Yes.
And, and not everybody in the office can do that. So if you're willing to, employ me and understand that I am a mother, but I'm working on a degree, but when the degree part of that is done, there's going to be a vast amount of wealth and the work ethic that's been there all along, but with more time.
Right. And I do think, you're talking obviously about pursuing your doctorate degree, but as we were kind of talking a little bit before we got started, this really can apply whether you're just taking coursework to increase your skills, or you're completing a certificate, you're doing some online learning, even free online courses. It really can apply to anything. It doesn't have to be an organized, this is what it is. When you treat that as a second job, when you treat it as kind of a set thing on your calendar, you're much more likely to be productive and successful.
Yeah. And you feel less guilt, I think, because I think when you kind of let your schedule just be sporadic, you feel like you're stealing time away from your children and you're stealing time away from the other job. But when you set the exact time at the exact day of the week, it doesn't feel like you're stealing time. It is time that has been set aside to do this other job, which is your degree. And for me, setting it at that time also, my kids would come up and interrupt me. If I'm trying to work on something at 9:30 at night, my kids might get up, want a glass of water, whatever. My children are not getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Like, they want to sleep in. And so it was almost like guaranteed quiet time, not interrupted at all. And I never felt like I was stealing any time from them. And then the nights that I knew that I was going to be getting up that early in the morning, I would just make sure I went to bed when they went to bed. There was, not watching TV or, staying up late doing social media or whatever.
In what ways do you think serving in these multiple roles, right, how has that benefited you as a mom?
I think it has definitely helped me better understand the need for boundaries. I grew up with a mom who was just incredible, and she was there with us whenever we needed her to be. She would drop everything to be there for us. And, there were lots of times that she would take us with us when she would go and do whatever jobs that she was working on, especially when she was younger or when we were younger. And so I felt like I had a lot to live up to. And it really, really weighed heavily on my shoulders. But I think it's definitely helped me understand the importance of drawing those boundaries at work, like saying, no, I do have a sick child at home, or I have a child who has an event at school, and I understand I need to be here, but also that is a priority, and I can make the things up X, Y, and Z time. Or drawing a boundary with my college professors, helping them understand I care about my grades. You can look at my transcript. I make great grades. Like, I'm a hard worker, but my kids need me on this day at this time, and I'll do whatever I got to do to make it up. And I'm here communicating that with you. But even drawing those boundaries with my own children, they have a tendency to think that we are the end all be all for them. And, drawing those boundaries in the sand and being like, look, I'm going to school to make your life better, to make all of our lives better. And that means I need your help doing the laundry, 3 times a week, or I need your help. Right now, my kids, both of them cook now. And that started with them understanding that there are going to be some nights that I have to work late, or I have to, work on homework or the dissertation or whatever. And even when I was working on a bachelor's degree, and I had a little one at home and I was a single mom, helping my child understand you might not get quantity with me, but you're going to get quality. So when I am with you, I'm not on my phone. I'm not, watching TV. I'm spending all that time with you, doing whatever you want to do that day, whether it be going to the park or coloring or whatever. Them learning to understand those boundaries is really important. And I think it's helped me as a mom, but I also think it's helped them as they grow. And they understand it, whether it be interacting with their own teachers, like understanding boundaries of someone who's balancing a lot of things.
Absolutely. And it helps them to learn how to self-advocate. And it helps them to understand independence with a net there, right? That yes, but I am able to do some of these things. The other thing that I think it really does is it shows our children that we take time with them seriously. That it's not just I'm here all the time, but not really engaged, right, but I'm being very intentional. In that it's an intentional choice as opposed to I feel like I have to be here because that's what it means to be a mom. Right. But I'm intentionally choosing to engage with you in a unique way.
Right. And they don't understand that. It has to be very clearly explained to them. But once I explained it to them, that light bulb moment went off. And so having that conversation with them, but then also repeating that conversation anytime they're like, can you do X, Y, and Z? Explaining to them the intentionality of the quality time that I'm spending with them. We would also set kind of like celebration benchmarks throughout the degree. And so like when mommy gets this thing accomplished, whether it be like the end of the semester or a big paper that's due or whatever, you get to pick what we're going to go do together. And like, I remember my son, he loves being outdoors. And so like there was a state park within an hour's drive of us that we had never gone exploring before. And so like he wanted to go on a hike. And so I was like, okay, I promise when this semester ends, me and you are going on this hike together. And so it kind of gave them something to look forward to. But they definitely have to have that explained to them real clearly.
I also think you're right. It gives them something to look forward to, but don't you think it also helps them feel a part of the education that like they understand that yes, I'm getting the degree, but it's us as a family working together towards this degree.
Yeah, that everybody has a role to play. And so like we, instead of having a chore chart or whatever, like we used to have something, we still have something called Team Myers. And like every player on the team had something that they had to contribute. And so it was a reminder to them that, you know, this was a part of all of us. And I told someone the other day, I've never had a graduation ceremony without a child there. Right. My oldest was 2 years old when I graduated high school. And so I had a child cheering me on at my high school graduation, a child cheering me on at bachelor's, master's, and PhD. And to share that celebration with them has always been really important. And, you know, when people offer graduation presents, for me, it's important to have something that we can all share together. So, you know, contribute money towards a family vacation, because my kids haven't been able to spend a whole lot of time with me over the past year or two. And so, you know, that's the kind of things that I ask for graduation.
Wonderful. I love that idea of, I think one of the things TW does that I absolutely love is the family graduation ceremony, where the children will, you know, dress up in the cap and gown and walk across with the moms. And to me, that really recognizes that that not only is education something that an individual embarks upon, but everybody within that individual sphere is also embarking on that journey together. And we all benefit from doing that. So and I think it's such a great way to positively impact our children. That yes, you know, showing them, yes, this is hard. I'm working full time. I'm taking care of you. I'm also doing this. But the benefits to all of us are meaningful enough for me to put in that hard work.
Right. Absolutely.
So, wonderful. Okay. So, as you're filling all these different roles and responsibilities, there's obviously a lot of demand on you, which we know is associated with stress. So, you know, how did you, as a working mother, and what advice for other working mothers, how can you, what would your suggestion be on how to manage your stress? How did you manage it during this time?
I mean, this part was not intentional by any means, but looking back, I can see like I survived, and these, you know, there's a few ways I think that I was able to survive. One of them is having moments that are just for you, which is very rare when you are going to school, have kids, working, all those things. So something as simple as like picking out a podcast on the drive home from work or the drive home from school that I know my kids would not be interested in, or maybe it's not appropriate for my kids, which is one of my favorites. You know, something that's just for me and not having to interact with anyone. No phone calls, nothing. No checking in on anyone. So like that 15-minute commute is just for me to pick some podcasts for me to listen to and to just giggle and laugh and unplug from all the other moving parts of my life. So that was like one of them. I had a professor who mentored me through the master's degree, and then on the doctoral degree at a different university, one of my committee members. So master's degree and PhD. I had two different professors who kept telling me the same thing, and it was so annoying. Every time I'd get stressed out and I would vent about it in an email or talk to them about it, they would say, you just need to go on a walk. And I was like, that's so irritating. A walk is not going to fix my situation. But looking back on it now, every time I'd go on a walk and I would choose not to make a phone call, not to text, not to be on social media, and I would just unplug from everything, I would come back feeling refreshed and ready to face whatever I had been dealing with. And so just being able to unplug and go on those walks. I don't know what it is about moving your body, and then it helps your brain process it. But again, it felt like something that was just for me. There were times, I'd get the kids and I'd be like, walks are great for kids. Walks are healthy. Let's get them out from behind the TV or whatever. And I would have to let go of that mom guilt and say, nope, I'm doing this one just for me. This walk is just for me. No dog, no kids, nothing. And I think that was really beneficial to me. So finding those just little niche moments to do something tiny for me was really helpful.
And we need that to restore ourselves.
Yeah.
We need that to replenish ourselves so that we can continue to fulfill all the roles and, and manage that stress. So absolutely great advice, even if it was annoying. So, can you give an example of an instance in which the multiple roles that you were juggling were in conflict? How did you handle that situation?
I think one of the moments that I felt some conflict, strangely enough, came with not my smaller family, like my kids, my husband, my extended family. So I come from a very big family, and we do a lot of things together. And, I would call favors into my mom or, family to help me out with the kids when we were doing kind of things. So I felt like this obligation to show up to everybody's birthday and every get together and all those things. And it was really wearing on me, trying to keep up with work, kids, college, and all the things that my family was expecting me to be at. And I finally had to have a talk with some of them that was like, it's not that I don't care about you all, and it's not that I don't appreciate all of you, but with everything that's on my plate, I can't attend my uncle's 57th birthday party. Like it's just not a priority for me. And I adore that person, and people are important, and family is huge for me. But I can let him know that I'm thinking about him. I can let my extended family know that I'm thinking about them in other ways than showing up to an event. And I think it ended up being the same conversation that I had with my children of, I love you, and you're not going to see me for the next 2 years, which feels like a long time, but I'm thinking about you. I care about you. I'm going to text you and check in and, occasionally call or whatever. But until this degree is done, I'm not going to be able to attend every family get together that we have. And that was really hard for me because, like I said, family is huge for me. And that was a struggle, but that was, again, I think those boundaries set with love, like understand that this is coming from a place of love, and I'm not making a degree more important than you are as my family member, but my children are my priority, and providing for them is a priority. And if you want me to be able to provide for my children and not have to lean on family all the time financially for support, then you're going to have to be supportive of this degree. And so those were the conversations that we had to have to kind of deal with that conflict.
And I love that idea of boundaries with love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always just love for others, but also kind of boundaries with kind of love and acceptance of ourselves and our own limitations.
Right.
And really needing to recognize that I can't do this all. And no one can. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
My uncle will not feel, once I have this conversation, that I love him any less.
Right.
Because I didn't go to that one birthday party on that one day. The other times that I interact,
right.
Because they're more meaningful interactions are going to demonstrate that love and that caring.
Right. And I think, and you had mentioned being first generation, especially when you come from first generation college graduate and a lot of your family has not graduated college or attended college. I can totally understand that the assumption is, oh, she thinks she's too good for us now. And I can get that. I get it 100%. And that's why the communication part of it was really important for me to show up to an event, give a big hug. I love you. I'm so excited to be here. Just a heads up, you might not see me much for the next 12 months because of, these are the degree goals that I have, and it's really getting hot and heavy. But I can't wait to come back in a couple of years and see all of you again.
Right. And I think also being aware that, and I think this is true for family, but it's also for employers, that sometimes there really isn't an understanding of what it means to be a student. There's this sense of, oh, well, you're only in class for this many hours, and being able to say, yes, but as you can see, these are the projects that I'm doing, but this is how it's going to benefit you.
Right.
And I know personally, I've done some certificates while working, and I've been able to take some of the course projects and make them relevant to either my family or my work position.
Absolutely.
And then I feel like I'm kind of, it's like 2 for 1. So I'm able to do this research or this study or do this project. But look, it's going to make me a better mom because I'm going to be able to do this. It's going to make me a better employee because I'm going to have these skills. And I'm going to bring that back.
Right.
So it's really a win-win.
Absolutely.
For all of us. So, kind of when you think of broadly, so not necessarily just your lived experience, but just more broadly, what can families and universities and workplaces do to support, working mothers who are also students?
I think having very set, clear expectations and policies in place. Because I've been at universities and I've been at jobs where they say one thing, but the way they treated you were totally different. And if you plan to be accepting of someone who is pursuing a degree or someone who is a mom or doing both, there should be some set policies and expectations in place. And I think those are some of the best places that I've worked where the expectations were clear and they were in writing and I could refer to them as needed to make sure I was being the best employee possible. I was being the best student possible, but I was also meeting the needs of my family. And, I try to do that as a professor in my syllabus, saying, these are what the university's policies are, but these are my expectations that I have. So that way my students totally understand the agreement that we have, that it's not, and I'm totally willing to do like a person by person because I understand everybody's life is different. But I think it helps everybody when there's transparency there. And then I think that obvious one is flexibility, right? I mean, doing away with assumptions, doing away that just because someone is the first one to leave work every day means that they're less of a worker. Like, you don't know what that woman might be doing after she gets the kids into bed at night. She might be doing another 2 or 3 hours of work at home on her laptop, and she's keeping up with everybody else in the company or, at the university or at the school. Just because she's the first one to leave doesn't mean that she's going to be doing less work than everybody else. So that flexibility in our understanding and our mindsets, but also flexibility in, what we were talking about earlier, like those remote hours. I can multitask like a boss. And so if I have to leave to go pick up a sick kid, I can easily go home, pop up my laptop and deal with my sick baby while I'm also getting stuff done like you asked me to, and just, have that faith in me that I can do that.
Right. And I think that's so much easier when there's transparent expectations, right? And you're being evaluated on your progress towards clear expectations and goals, as opposed to assumptions about what I am or am not doing.
Right. Absolutely. And that was something I was let go from a job. I had just finished up my bachelor's and was starting my master's, and I had gotten a GTA position, which was like dream for me. I was so excited about it because I was, going to do my childcare job, but actually do this academic job on top of it. And there were not clear expectations about the meeting dates, and the meeting dates kept moving around and things would shift. And I kept going, I have a child, I have to get child care. And you guys are setting these meeting dates during timeframes when child cares are closed, or you're doing it during holidays or when the schools are closed or whatever. And so I just need like clear schedule so I can make those arrangements ahead of time. And I didn't put that into writing. In hindsight, I wish I would have emailed that instead of just saying it verbally. And I ended up being let go from the job because they said I was inconsistent, even though it was them moving the meetings around. And so that was really frustrating for me. And I think that was one of the first times when I realized before I accept a job, they need to understand that I have a child and that childcare is imperative. And are the hours of this job going to fit within that childcare? And if they don't, am I going to have some flexibility there? And so that was one of those first moments for me of realizing how important those clear expectations are.
And I think maybe that is one thing that we can do as employers, as leaders, is to provide that for other working mothers and really other working parents because of the multiple responsibilities that have to be juggled.
Yes.
Excellent. What is your best advice for working mothers generally?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I will always say build your village. Get your clique, your posse, your crew, like get your people and put them together. Because I look back, we talked a little bit earlier about how you go into survival mode lots of times when you're trying to balance all these things, and you look back and you're like, how did I even function? And I can easily identify one of the ways that I function was because I found my village very early. And I think for me, that came naturally because when I was working on my bachelor's degree, I lived in family housing on campus. So everybody living there had kids. And then when I worked on my master's degree, I had moved out of family housing, but I would seek out other moms on campus. I pay really close attention to the conversations that were being had to see if anybody else had kids. And I would also, when I worked on my doctoral program, again, there were a lot of mothers in that housing unit. And so I would be the first one to like walk across the hallway. Hey, I noticed you have kids the same age as mine. My name is Aimee. Nice to meet you.
Right.
If you ever need a sitter or you need some help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And then a lot of times they would reciprocate and be like, same here, because they knew they needed the village as much as I did. And so there is no way that I could have survived without that village of other moms who were trying to juggle as much as I did. And I think as moms, we feel really guilty asking for help. We don't like to put people out because we know how busy we are. But if you're building a village of other busy moms, then you get the opportunity to barter and trade. Like, I don't feel as guilty asking you to watch my kids on Tuesday nights when I have class if I know I'm going to reciprocate that for you on Thursday nights when you have class. Or if you need me to pick your kids up from school one day because there was an emergency and I just happen to work 2 minutes down the road, I'm okay with that because I know you got my back when it comes to other things.
Right.
And so having that village, my family was really, really helpful, very helpful, but nothing was more helpful than having that village of other moms who were trying to balance so many other things. And we really needed each other. And it wasn't just, the basic, watching our kids, like it was other stuff too. Like, hey, I do not have time to run and go get milk and eggs. Do you happen to have half a cup of milk and a couple of eggs, right? Or I know you're headed home from work and I forgot to pick up X, Y, and Z. Do you mind picking that up for me? And then I'll make sure, I give whatever I need to you. So the village is the answer every time.
Absolutely. And I think that not just finding a village, but finding a good village it is so important too. And like you said, sometimes they reciprocate and sometimes they don't. And then you have to decide, can I continue, as part of this village?
Be very selective about who you give your energy to.
Absolutely.
Be very selective. And I know sometimes it feels mean, but it's not.
Right.
It's not. If you want to pick that person back up later on in your life, then that's fine. But if they're not being reciprocal and understanding the concept of a village, because there are some people out there who don't understand the concept of a village.
Right.
Village is not one way. The village
Yes.
is reciprocal, and so, it boils back down to boundaries and being willing to, you don't have to cut that person off and be like, we're not friends
Yes,
anymore. But, if that person calls you for a favor, then be willing to say, hey, yeah, I'm totally cool doing that, but can you do X, Y, and Z for me next week? Is that okay? And if they're hesitant or say no, then it's time to just kind of back away and let some of that energy go towards something else.
Right. And I think also looking at a village as not just necessarily helping you, but also helping your children. I mean, I know there were many times when, my group, my village, like when the kids would come over, they would play.
Yep.
They would entertain themselves together. And so there was that time where I could kind of refocus and get some things done. Whereas had they just been by themselves, there would have been probably more interruptions, etc.
Oh, 100%. I know when I lived in family housing, at one point in time, like the moms would organize block parties and, during the summer evenings and go to the Dollar Tree and buy those little cheap glow-in-the-dark sticks. Yes. And somebody would play music and the kids would all be out there running around and just one of the moms would be hanging out with them, while the rest of us were in there maybe cooking dinner or getting some schoolwork done or whatever. And it benefits your kids, but I think it's important for your kids to also learn how to build a village. Yes. I think in the age of social media, our children have lost that concept a little bit. And so my children being able to watch me establish those relationships and understand that those relationships were built out of love for my kids, but also love for other moms. Like, I'm not building this relationship with you just so you can help me do some things. I'm doing it because I also recognize that you're a mom and I know that I'm going to have time to help you when when you don't have time. And so I think it's important that our children learn how to do that.
Right. And oftentimes those are lifelong friends that will survive way beyond our children being grown. Some of my closest friends are friends that I had through my village. And now my children are grown and their children are grown, but we still remain friends. And so, there is that kind of, you get something out of it personally beyond how it's helping you live your life. It's a friendship, and friendships benefit us above and beyond other relationships.
Right. So. And I think especially for those of us who are moms of girls, it can get nasty with girls, especially when they hit the adolescent age. And my middle daughter has said, like, it was really cool to see you have friends that were women that were really goal-oriented and driven, and you all didn't compete with one another, you supported one another. And none of you ever talked ugly about each other, and there wasn't this gossipy kind of environment. Like, when you all got together, it was all about, well, what degree, what class are you taking, or what are you doing at work, or what research project are you working on, or, what are you learning? What new hobby are you learning? And like, she was like, it was really cool for me to be able to see you surrounded by goal-oriented women that weren't competing with one another. They were lifting each other up.
Building each other. And in a sense, you're role modeling how to be a friend. But also, I think, as you said, during those years, when everything gets really, it can turn very negative, letting them know that they can have a realistic expectation that a friend is someone who will build you up, not tear you down.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a wonderful way to role model something. We refer to that as kind of relational aggression, right? That we tend to see more often in girls than boys. but being able to role model healthy female relationships and friendships is something that a lot of girls really need to see.
Right. Absolutely.
I think one of the things that social media has done has also allowed for less depth in relationships. And so when we build these villages, they tend to be deeper and more meaningful connections. And I think that in a world of kind of separation or kind of surface level relationships, being able to show the value of that deeper connection is so critical for our children. So what is your best advice? I'm getting all your best advice here. I'm going to get all of it here. Specifically for working mothers who have made the decision to go back to school or to take that certificate course or to learn that particular skill, what is your best advice?
I think it goes along the lines of the village, right? You know, you've got intentionally build that support with people who would have reciprocal relationships. But, you know, a village, people talk to one another. And I think the worst thing that you can do if you decide to go back to school is to isolate yourself because you're like, I'm going to be too busy. I'm not going to have time, you know, whatever. The last thing you should ever do is isolate yourself. So, you know, talk to your boss, let them know I'm planning on going back to school. How do you feel about that? You know, talk to your family members. I'm thinking about going back to school. Are you on my team? Are you in the village? Are you willing to step in for me and babysit and pick up kids and those kind of things? And then definitely not being afraid to communicate and advocate with your instructors. It's huge. You know, I think about how vastly different my story would have turned out if I had not been raised by a mother who taught me to speak up. There were some things that have happened. There was, you know, a time when my child, when I was a single mom, my child's biological father kidnapped her for 3 days, and I had no clue where she was. And I would try to reach out, and he would say, if you call the police, you'll never see her ever again. It's hard to focus on your schoolwork when you're going through something like that. And so, you know, I went to my professor and I was like, look, I'm not making excuses. I'm just letting you know what's happening in my life right now. And so if I am a little late with an assignment or something, can I have a little bit of grace? Or is there any way I could take an assignment, maybe shorten it down just a little bit because I need to get it done, but I also have this going on. You know, I was dealing with some really horrible things related to violence. And I went to one of my professors and said, I'm struggling with this, not making excuses. I just need you to know what's going on in my life right now. And she opened the world to all these university resources that I had no clue even existed. That was a game changer for me, counseling being one of them. I didn't know universities offered counseling. And if I hadn't have communicated to her what I was struggling with as a student, as a mom, you know, as a worker, then I wouldn't have gotten the help that I needed. And so I think communicating your needs to people doesn't mean that you're making excuses, and it doesn't mean that you're playing a victim. It means that you're advocating for yourself, you're advocating for your children, you're advocating for your education, and that's an okay thing to do. You know, if you need some time off because of something that's going on, ask for it. The worst thing they're going to say is no. You know, and you never know. They might say, yes, take that day off and then take the next day off too, because we value you. You won't know until you ask.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, that's again, when you start to find out who is in your village and who isn't. That professor who was like, you need counseling and it's free, and I'm going to let you use all of next week's class to go to the counseling sessions to get your foot in the door. Like, that professor became a part of my village. And, you know, no, she couldn't babysit my kid for me or pick up groceries for me, but she made all kinds of recommendations of resources that she was aware of that I didn't know about. And she would check in on me. And I needed someone who could do that. And so I would definitely say, if my biggest piece of advice around that concept of a village is, you can't build that village without communicating and advocating for yourself. And so don't attempt to do any of this in isolation.
And then, understand that sometimes you'll be told no, but then you're able to make a decision, right? And sometimes by not asking, we kind of back ourselves in a corner where there's only one choice.
Right.
Whereas if we had kind of stepped forward and advocated and asked, we would have at least had the potential for some options.
Right.
And so we're really kind of not allowing ourselves to have as many options as we may actually have and simply just not be aware of it.
Right.
In my experience, I have found that even those professors or those employers that I really genuinely did not think were going to be supportive were actually some of the most supportive. It was a surprise every single time.
Right.
But it was also because I had, I think, built a reputation as someone who was genuinely interested in my education. I was genuinely interested in being the best employee I could be. Like when you establish that pattern,
right,
and when you go in and say, hey, I will not have this project done by this point in time. Can I have an extension or can I alter this? This is what's going on. No excuses, but I used to say, I can never be told yes if I don't ask.
That's right. That's right. And that goes for every realm of your life, whether it be with your family, with your professors, or your boss.
So as women, we're kind of socially conditioned not to ask.
Right.
And so what we're really suggesting is that we kind of have to step out of that and empower ourselves to advocate for ourselves.
Right.
And I think then we have a responsibility as employers, as educators, and as mothers, that when we have the opportunity to give those options to someone, we're really thoughtful in our decisions.
So absolutely. And the way I think of it is the more mothers that we end up getting through these college degrees and into the workforce, the more chances there are of compassionate, open-minded, flexible employees and employers. And, the people who are in charge now have been in our shoes.
Right.
And it's one reason why I decided to go into higher ed is because I had so many professors be kind and loving and supportive of me. And, there were times that they said, no, I can't give you that extension, but I can do this.
Right.
And that helped me understand things a lot more. But it's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a college professor myself, is because I wanted to be able to be that person for my students one day.
Right. And I think what a wonderful way to kind of wrap it up and conclude it is that we are able to be maybe not part of the closest village, but we can be kind of maybe supporting outposts for others around us. And we can be change makers. And so as you're thinking about, should I ask this? Also realize that you may be, by not asking, you may be denying someone's ability to be a change maker in your life. And that might be something that's such a positive experience for that employer or for that instructor. So yes, they can say no, but they also may really be wanting to have the opportunity to say yes.
Right. Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Aimee, for all of your tips, your advice, but also being giving of your story. And I hope that will be something that impacts other women who are considering taking on that additional responsibility of schoolwork. And really being able to see that it is possible to do and we can do it effectively.
Yeah, no, it was an honor. I had fun.
The Mothers Leading the Way team shares the goal of identifying the challenges and opportunities faced by working mothers with leadership ambitions. Through research, videos, blogs, and social media, our team is passionately committed to providing working mothers with resources to narrow the leadership gap. The Mothers Leading the Way project is supported by the Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership at Texas Woman's University. This institute is dedicated to preparing more women to take on successful roles in business and public service by providing education, mentoring, and networking. Mothers Leading the Way is also supported by Positive Leadership. Positive Leadership is committed to empowering diverse women to maximize their leadership potential through workshops, presentations, coaching, and consultations. Check out Positive Leadership at positiveleadership.com.